the one thing people has to recognize is that people are complex. You know, you can't label a person this way. You can't, because like you said, Killmonger had different layers to him. You know what I mean? He was angry, but he also loved.
He was a victim. He was a victim of circumstance, a victim of society. They didn't show it in the movie, but he grew up without a father.
Yeah,
he had to grow up without a father in America.
Right.
And they had to cut that out, obviously, for time reasons.
Right.
But don't downplay what that's like, especially if you live in an impoverished area.
Right.
Especially if you're aspiring to be successful and get past the trauma of, I don't have my dad anymore.
Right.
That was the only person. They don't talk about his mother, right?
So,
or anybody else loving him throughout that childhood to adulthood. That's trauma.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my father. I had my mom. I had 4 brothers. I was lucky to have male influence to say, you know what, this is how you act. This is how you treat women. This is how, I had all of that because I was the youngest of 4 brothers. So I had older brothers to influence me all the way to adulthood. And I got examples of how man can act, how to be married and how to treat your kids, all that stuff. Right. They skipped that part in the movie. They just said, he's a kid, now he's an adult,
right? And
he's angry. Right. But I would say anybody, sit a 30-plus-year-old black man from America that's been living in America from multiple walks of life. Try to talk to multiple if you can, and ask them about, being raised in America.
Right.
Ask them if anybody in their family has been killed unjustly. Right. Whether it be from police or society, local stuff. It really doesn't, because, as a child, you're not choosing those things. You have to. He said, and that was a sad part a lot of people overlooked. I loved it. When his father, in that dream state, said, no tears for me. And he was like, death is just a part. It's just a part of living out here.
Yeah.
That was from a kid's perspective.
Yeah.
And he probably, I think that was a head nod from the director to say, we had to cut that part of him growing up. Because that was Killmonger as an adult, but he was represented by a young kid.
Yeah.
And he basically had to say, death is a part of life out here in these streets.
Yeah.
And he had to learn that as a child. So to really, downplay and say, he was misogynistic and he choked that lady. Listen,
he was broken.
Listen, that's a broken mind that you're talking about.
And then the one thing too is, if you go back to the movie too, is the birthmark in his lip.
Yeah.
But he never knew where that birthmark came from.
No.
And then later on in his life, he realized that. And I think that scarred him the most, that he had a family out there.
Yeah.
And he felt like nobody came to come get him. And he, again, that goes to that premise that he was alone.
Right. I mean, listen, man, you can say all the things, but until you empathize, and empathy is not given. If you look at the definition of empathy, it says it's a skill.
Right.
It's an actual skill to try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's not a default thing that everybody understands. Empathy takes practice.
Right.
So until you try to genuinely put yourself in someone else's shoes like that, man,